Okay, we are back. We're doing it live, chat. We're gonna do this live again because we got a little video to watch. So it looked like Gil put out looked like a podcast thing. I'm not for sure, Gil. Well, he seemed like he talked to a whole bunch of devs, and of course he's gonna actually talk to Airship about what's going on with Wayfinder. So we're gonna watch this segment, which seemed to be what, chat? Maybe 20-30 minutes. It looked like of this interview. See if we get anything else out of this for Wayfinder. And of course, if you want that after the fact over on YouTube, I will have a link in the description below so you can check out that part of the interview and the whole interview. So let's figure this out, chat, because like I said, my main question going into Wayfinder being 100% single player / peer-to-peer co-op, it mainly what's going to happen with the open war. Are we going to add more stuff? What are going on with the bosses, since a lot of bosses involved you farming item to summon them, or being on timers? Are they just going to be around forever? Is it going to be easier to farm the items? How are they going to be like adjusted to only be like 1 to 3 players? Like, that's the main question I have. Also, what are going to go on with the characters? Are we just going to have them unlocked by default? Are we going to unlock them by progressing to the story? Are we still got to farm them and just now you can't spend money on them? Are we going to still be able to farm equipment, or all the equipment just drops? And they just say they are going to be dropped, but the question is, like, will that be exclusively just drops for everything, not farming the materials? I have questions, chat. I have a lot. So let's see if we can get this answered, chat, and figure out what's going on with Wayfinder. So guard your yields and let's get into this, shall we?
Specifically Ryan Stefanelli and Joe Mads about
after we
in the United States and getting frustrated. Just kind of like, basically I just use City Skylines to
okay, hang on, I went back a few seconds.
Learning how to be a snob about civil engineering and be annoying about it. But hey, you know.
Hey, what are you going to do?
What are you gonna do?
Beat this up, chat.
Next up, we're just going to continue to talk to people who make games.
Okay, here we go.
To Airship Syndicate folks,
we got we good.
Specifically
I got
Ryan
it, chat.
Stefanelli and Joe Mads about
I think if I remember right, Joe Mads is the CEO.
There was a whole interesting thing with that, and now it's coming back. And I think this is a really interesting conversation, a perspective from a studio, and a candid nature of some studio folks that you don't usually hear. So let's jump into that now.
Okay, let's see, chat. Let's figure this out.
Hey guys, so this is going to be a really interesting conversation. I want to get to how you got to where you are. Wayfinder was kind of a canceled live service game in the headlines, but now you're re-emerging. So what exactly did you announce? Ryan, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, canceled in a sense.
Joe
it's weird when a game is canceled, but it's still going and still available. It was tough in the moment to have that happen, and really, I guess, to give a real brief backstory to what led to the decision that may be a surprise to some is after DE decided to terminate the agreement, our first thought was, let's go out and find another similar partner that wants to continue the game as a live service title, the game that had been built for years to be. And I will say that when we were pitching the game,
nobody want to buy it, huh?
We didn't necessarily, we weren't pitching a free-to-play game. We felt like when we started talking with DE that it could be a potential fit for one and that they would be the right partner given their success with Warframe. So we sort of pivoted it towards being free-to-play. It was always intended to be online, but not necessarily free-to-play. Anyway, after DE moved on, so to speak, we started talking to other
a way to put
potential service-based partners to keep it a live service game, to keep it free to play, basically what it already was. And through a combination of the game's rocky launch, but also just the state of the industry in general, it became clear over the course of the following months that maybe wasn't in the cards. So we were left with really one reality, which is that the game was going to just be shut down. And like so many service-based games before it, just kind of be lost forever. And that just felt ridiculous, frankly, both for the players who had paid money for the game, but also for all of our teammates and the people over the years who had put a lot of themselves into the game. And so we started thinking about how could we keep this around forever? Could we even? Was it possible with the
The thing get caught up at box. The issue though is I wonder, since the game is, PC and PlayStation, and any now after going, as a single player game that month, it's still gonna go PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. So I'm wondering if they have like some like little contract with Sony. I wonder that a thing, or did they just pick Sony for whatever reason? Because it's like, don't forget, these are the same devs that also worked on like the Darksiders games and whatnot. So not like they have ever been like quote unquote console like exclusive by any means. But yeah, I wonder if it's some like thing there that kind of stand in the way of like some contract with Sony. Or is it just, once again, just Microsoft right now and imploding into itself, especially with all the shutdown, the acquisition, everything happening now, that they're just kind of like, nah. But then again, also, Microsoft haven't had that good of a luck with live server game other than, what, Sea of Thieves? That, like, it. Because, Halo kind of, shit the bed in a lot of ways. And whatnot, so, I don't know. But then again, I don't see Microsoft doing a lot right now. So that might be why, beyond like other contract we don't know about, might have stood in the way of Microsoft. And then probably if it was a few years ago, there'd probably be a distant discussion, to be honest.
Months that we had left of our own money.
Also, they have Final Fantasy now, so as far as the MMO is concerned. And do you want Microsoft to pull Amazon and try to buy like 20 MMOs and then not make any of them? So I'm telling you how to get me back in now, Joe.
To convert this to something that could live forever. And it turned out after it was really a multi-weeks long marathon planning session, we came up with the plan to just strip out the parts of the game that were struggling the most, those being the service, the parts of the game that were monetized, and just convert it into a kick-ass multiplayer, truly loot-based co-op action adventure. And so we have Wayfinder, what we're calling this the Echoes update. So basically Wayfinder Echoes was born from that. And so it's going to reemerge as an online buy it once, get everything, play forever co-op action game. And as a part of that, everything that was sold through storefront, those MTX,
Here we go.
which we know everybody loves right now, there is no more store. All of it is in the game and earnable, but it's more than just cosmetic like it was when it was in the store. Now it's all loot. So all the weapons have stats. They drop through the course of play as loot. All of the armor that was previously cosmetic, it has stats. It's collectible. They're all a part of a set.
Oh, okay,
and,
that's interesting.
You unlock the characters as you play the game. They're all
I thought
included,
it was going to be cosmetic
all for one
for
price. So it's just
the
a kick-ass,
microtransaction stuff.
pay once, play forever action game.
Yeah, right. Wow, that's a pretty massive pivot. And I can't really think of another game that has done this. Am I wrong about that? Is there anything you can think of where they're like,
it was tough for us to find someone who has, actually. We were pretty concerned about it as well at first. We're like, has anyone done this before?
Yeah.
Did you find anyone? I can't remember. Did you think of anyone that's
I
done
think there
it?
have been a few like Queen MMO that have.
were similar-ish, but not really, certainly not on the scale of Wayfinder that we could find. No, and we didn't know if that was going to help us or hurt us in one way. It's like, is there a reason that nobody else has done
it's good
this?
not having a choice because we just,
no rule book.
This is literally the only thing that we can do with it at this point. So maybe we'll be trendsetters.
Yeah, wonder how many whales in the game. The thing was about it, as far as whales are concerned, like, don't get me wrong, I saw people running around with, some of the outfits that you could buy for like $5-10 or whatever it was. I think they were more like 15 if I remember right. But nonetheless, like, I saw people running around with like, the random cosplay items and whatnot on. So I know people bought them, but I kind of feel like, from my experience, seeing the player base and whatnot over, the last like 7-8 months, is I kind of feel like it probably were more like top heavy, because I feel like more people bought like the $150 founder pack, because I know founder pack always sell a shit ton. Like look at Pat Exile as an example of how insane that shit can get. But I don't know how many people actually like bought up in the shop. Because the thing was about the microtransaction was they wasn't great. Like they wasn't great at all. Because not meaning like the art or anything was bad on the outfits and the skins or any of that stuff. It was more like super limited, and I think the main reason it was is maybe because the whole ideal, because like the main ideal was behind the storefront, was outside the skins, everything could be gotten in game. So you could buy, okay, so what you could do, you could buy skins, you could buy house items to decorate your house, you could buy characters, and each character intently a class. They fit like an archetype of classes in any other MMO. And you could buy weapons. And then they had the one battle pass that was technically a part of the bundle when you bought in. But we never really knew how much the battle pass was going to be. They never got to that point because the game just came with one when you bought it. So like the weapons and the characters you could farm. The house items, there was a few that I want to say was exclusive, but for the most part, most of them you could also like buy in game, by getting like currency and stuff in game, the free to play stuff. So the only thing that was like actually exclusive was to money was the founder packs and the skins. So I kind of feel like the game itself wasn't exactly ideal for whales. Because if you bought the character, like the characters are the only one that like, okay, I get if you don't want to, you don't want to farm up the items and hunt certain monster to get item, because like the characters are not hard to get. They're like most characters, if you know what you're doing, you could get in like 6 to 10 hours easily. I know some people obviously wouldn't want to do that for like, I think it was 5 characters, 6 characters. I think it was 6. So I get that, maybe just fight them all and be done with it. But when it came to all the other stuff, it like, maybe, once again, maybe this is me looking at it from, the free-to-play doubling attitude. I don't know. But when it came to, like, buying weapons and stuff, it like, I never saw a point for it just because they all like the character. They are, like, super easy to get. So, like, yeah, if you want them, like, right then and there, maybe. Like, maybe if you want to upgrade them, maybe. But yeah, I kind of feel like, it didn't have loot boxes. It didn't have any of, like, that stuff. So I kind of feel like they were missing, like, a lot of the stuff that, you would see, like, whales pulling, like, thousands upon thousands of dollars. Because at the end of the day, like, one of them things of, like, oh, I spent, like, say a whale spent, like, $500-600. They pretty much have everything. And then at that point, like, they can only spend, like, maybe like $40 every, like, 2 weeks. So it wasn't, like, that infinite money pool, which maybe could have been another issue here. But, you know how, like, in the case of, like, NGS or Fancy Star, you could just pull loot boxes to get outfits and then resell. You have that whole economy tied around loot boxes. The game didn't have it. So, like, from my opinion, most of the people I saw, it felt like it was more people buying the founder pass and then not really welling at all. Or if they did well, they pretty much, after spending, a couple $100, they had nothing to spend the money on anymore. So, which also, in that day and age, probably another reason a lot of players didn't stick around. So, because, sadly, that kind of the reality we live in with the live server wannabe MMO types. Like, you have to have an infinite money sink for the whales, and when you don't, it don't usually go good for you. And I hate to say it, but the truth is that probably did not help the game at all, of it being, like, so anti-whale for pretty much its whole life, pretty much. So yeah, I don't think we had that many, all things considered.
I don't know.
Yeah, and when we started talking, first of all with the programming team, because that's where you got to go first, right? It was a lot of work, and it was certainly ambitious, and we honestly didn't start the work on this until February, because from when was it, October, November, that the news broke from Digital Extremes through February, we were still pursuing this with publishers as free-to-play game. And it was in February that we were like, okay, this isn't working. Like, what are we going to do?
4 months of single
and
player
we first threw the idea out there, and
design.
everybody kind of looked around the room like, we can't really do that, right? Like, we can't just strip the service out, and how the hell are we going to convert everything to loot? Like, that's so much work. There's so much data. We figured it out. I mean, there are some, necessary evils that come with it. Like, players are all going to be starting the game over, right? Because there's no way to take that online data to an offline game, because everything about the player data is different.
Why I need to get that platinum
is different. The armor sets are all loot. The weapons are all loot. Everything about the game is different. So that on the surface seems like a negative, but it's also positive because it is a game worth replaying now. It's a very different experience because of the way all the stuff is unlocked. And that's to say nothing, and that's something that we'll be going into in future deep dives, like what about the gameplay has changed? What about the UI has changed? There's a lot of stuff that's new to the game as well. Players are going to see 2 brand new open world zones to explore, similar to the one that we had in the game. A lot of
they're talking about the one we always have, though,
of UI improvements and updates. So there's a lot about the game itself that's better, aside from just the fact that it's not full of microtransactions. There's a lot about the game that from top to bottom has changed. It's going to look, probably outside of the characters and the combat, which are fundamentally very similar, the wrapper, the style, the presentation, everything about it is very new.
Yeah. I mean,
they always change the UI like 4 times when it was in
but first, I want to just
MMO
go back a little bit, because I'd really like to understand a little bit more about that relationship with DE and how that sort of chapter went down from, like striking that partnership and like, roles, responsibilities within that. I'm guessing it was kind of like you guys make a game and then they market and publish it and whatever else, and infrastructure. But then obviously into the announcement of DE shuttering their publishing label and the closure of that, I'm kind of just interested to unpack that. So was it the case that you guys had the job of making the game?
Yeah, real quick on that. The whole trust shopping $100 and then thought, that's the reason, honestly. Like, I get the people who are upset that, have spent the money. I get it. I 100% understand. But I think this is one of them, like, rude awakening moment. Like, don't get me wrong, we have had stuff like this previously. There have been plenty of games that have went under that had, like, microtransaction stuff in it. And, there have been, like, hundreds of MMOs that had, like, monthly subscription that went under. But I kind of feel like what is happening here is maybe, once again, maybe this is the whole ramification of, like, all the industries, movie, music, games is all going through that problem right now of the whole, like, losing asset to the stuff you spend money on and having to now come to terms with that whole situation. Like, all that money you spend will be nothing eventually. Might it be 10 years from now, or might it be tomorrow? And I think that is the whole thing. Is like, I feel like a lot of people that is very upset about this. They're like, on one hand, like I said, I get it, you spend money, especially on something that only lasted like 9 months. But on the other hand, I also feel like this is one of them cases of, like, people are very quickly starting to come to terms with the idea of, like, oh fuck, I don't actually own what I'm spending my money on. Like the whole quote from, who was it? I think it was Ubisoft, right? About the whole thing of, like, you're gonna own nothing and be happy about it. Like, that reality is starting to hit here. So, like, once again, I understand it, but, like at the same time, this is, like, one of my main things. They've been, like, one of them life philosophy thing for me, because there's been something, because they're like, they go back. Cause don't forget, Chad, you could, like, buy DLC on, like, the original Xbox. And then you also, I remember the time as well, once again, they're gonna show my age here, of, like, the games that were exclusive to, like, the Sega channel, for all you who remember that, for the Sega Genesis, and how when the Sega channel went under, and Sega stopped putting that out, like, them games became lost media in a lot of ways. I know some of them have been archived at that point through, like, WOMs and whatnot, but, like, this is nothing new. Like, they've been happening forever, like, especially in the gaming space. So maybe growing up around that time and remembering that time and being old enough to comprehend what was happening with, like, the Sega channel maybe that also play into my worldview here of just like, and the main reason, my biggest thing I try to tell people, and you guys probably have heard me say it, is when it comes to microtransaction in gaming, is you need to come to terms with what you are buying instead of buying thinking you're gonna have it forever or buying it for the dopamine hit or anything of that end. You need to come to terms with the idea is like, I'm buying it now. I need to enjoy this in the moment because tomorrow it will be gone. You know? And like, don't get me wrong, like all the microtransaction stuff is still, you know, anywhere on a scale between like irritating to just like the worst thing ever, depending on the game, depending on the company. But yeah, like one of them cases of like, that is something I feel like a lot of people will hopefully come to terms with. And hopefully, you know, hopefully the people that are upset about this, hopefully the ones that will play the game when you go, single player in a month. Hopefully what they get with Torm will, you know, make them feel a little bit better or something. Or hopefully that will, like, help them into realizing, like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, you know? Realistically, they're going to be probably the same people who are upset about that, and they're going to go blow, you know, hundreds or $1,000 somewhere else, and then, you know, the cycle is just going to repeat itself into oblivion. But yeah, that's the main reason why I have my opinion of, like, for me, like, if I'm going to spend money on microtransactions, I usually, on one hand, try to keep the stuff that are, like, more relevant in the moment and helpful longer than like a 2-second dopamine hit. But at the same time is, I know not everyone have that opinion. Because like I said, for me, like, you know, like with PSO2 as example, like, yeah, I bought premium for the extra storage, and like I would buy like material storage and stuff. But like, don't get me wrong, material storage with all in-game currency. But still, you know, that was the main reason why I never did, like, loot pools or anything in New Genesis. Any of it would have been ideal for me to do that as a content creator, but that's beside the point. So yeah, that also in the case of Wayfinder, is, like, the main reason, like, going into, you know, the climate when it comes to, like, free-to-play live service MMO stuff, is, like, once again, it's a story at all time. Go back to literally what happened around 2003, 2004 with all the MMOs, and you will see what happened there. But, it was the main reason, like, I would telling people, like, yeah, do not buy the $150 version of that game. If it looks interesting, buy the $20. You get late $20 of fun out of it for now. And if the game dies, and, you know, back then it was, like, do my whole thing, like, if it died tomorrow, hopefully you can get $20 worth of fun out of it. Like, don't go crazy. And, you know, here we are. You know, people went crazy, but yeah, I know a lot of people are suckers for, like, founder packs. So, like, I've seen the people who are spending, like, multiple $100s on a single founder pack in, like, you know, Warframe and, like, Path of Exile. So, yeah.
And D would assume all responsibility for marketing and publishing and server infrastructure. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean that's generally correct. They definitely did the lion's share of the marketing, all the publishing work, all the relationships with the first parties, the stuff you'd expect a traditional publisher to do.
Yeah.
On the service-based side, there were roles and responsibilities on both sides. You know, our tech director would be the best one to answer that. But we both had a hand in, like, I think they were doing logging queue, a lot of the login stuff. We did database. We did a lot of, you know, everybody played a role.
Yeah, right.
But it was outside of that, it was pretty much we made the game and they did the publisher stuff. A lot of feedback, a lot of input on the monetization scheme, that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, which is when we signed with them, the whole idea was we don't know free to play. They do. If we want to do a service-based game, we will partner with somebody that can plug those skill set gaps, right? Because we wouldn't have tried it on our own because we wouldn't have known what the hell we were doing. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think, sorry.
I was just going to say a lot of the systems and the design of the game was based on a lot of the learnings from Warframe, which, again, it was a huge hit. So we thought, let's learn from these guys. They steered us away from a lot of like pitfalls, and I don't think we would have had the confidence to even attempt free to play, like Ryan said, without a partner like DE.
Yep.
So it was definitely very valuable when it was a free to play game.
Yeah, sure. So the server stuff though has always struck me as passing strange, because it obviously very rocky in terms of server performance in that launch window and immediately after. But at the same time,
Hey Z,
DE
how you doing, Z?
Over nearly a decade of experience in managing a very large scale live service, server dependent.
Real quick, how you doing, Z? Second of all, I don't really want to go to Texas because they're in Texas. So I don't think me and Texas lines up too well, but yeah, how you doing, Z? We're in the middle of the interview of like what going on with Wayfinder that came out today. So welcome, Z.
Game. So how did that happen exactly? What exactly went wrong there? Like, what was the deal?
I think so Warframe is a peer-to-peer game, and that's not necessarily something that people wouldn't do that today. So they made the correct decision.
I don't want to be here either,
we did together, that it wouldn't be a peer-to-peer game. So we couldn't use Warframe's tech, right? So to the extent that Warframe had proven server tech, probably wouldn't have made sense for Wayfinder. I don't know, maybe we could have made it work. But all the backend tech was brand new. It was a platform that DE was developing in-house, potentially to serve more than just Wayfinder if they were to publish more than just our game. And through a series of events, I think the game probably, definitely, as we saw, needed some more beta testing. Just needed more time with more players in.
Probably. This is a good point, chat. This is something I brought up originally. Do you guys remember, chat? When I was saying, like, back when we was in quote beta, back when it wasn't NDA or anything, but we couldn't show gameplay or anything. I couldn't go in like super deep detail or anything because the videos was technically NDA. But like during that time, if you guys remember when I was like, hey, keep an eye on Wayfinder, especially since all you were PSO players at the time. You remember when I was telling you guys that the one thing that seemed a little suspicious here about all this was how they were doing private betas. Like that, when I originally heard about the private beta, like going back to like February, like literally like February of like what was that 2023, I think 2. I think it was 3. I think it was 2023. And I was playing there for a few months. And then when they were all like, oh yeah, we're going to put the game out in like May, and then, it got put to June, and then it got put to August. Because, it got delayed a few times. You remember, chat, like when I was talking about like back in them days, how they're like, yeah, we're just going to release an early access at $20, and then it got delayed like 4 times. I said it like, I don't understand why they are not doing a public beta. Especially a public beta with no NDAs, because like the reason I was saying it back then had more to do with the marketing side, because the game worked fine in cold beta, but when you only have like 100 people playing, of course it's gonna work fine. But yeah, I did talk about how I really wish they did like an open beta, if anything, just to get people talking about that game, because like. What was it? I think it was like a 5-second trailer at like the Game Awards in 2022. And then, what was it? Like a 1.5-minute trailer at the OTK event last year. And then Asmongold and them like gussed about it for like 5 minutes, and that was like it. So good to see that, they elite recognize it also from a tech point of view. I was thinking about it more from a PR point of view, but a tech point of view also will work as well. So, at least they're talking about that now.
Probably a larger scale open beta, stuff like that, to expose some of the flaws that we found on launch day. And had we done that, we probably could have avoided some of them, but
Yeah, not everything would
it
have
was
been avoided.
it was new tech. It was new tech, and it needed more time. It's kind of a classic combination of problems.
Sure. So, so that rocky launch happened, and obviously a lot of that was about server stuff, and I think as well there was some technical issues within the game itself, and general contents teething issues that come with any early access, which is fairly natural because that's the point of early access for sure. But then sort of fast forward a little bit, and then DE rather suddenly announced that they're shuttering their publishing label and that, support for the game would end. So tell us about that moment and exactly how that transpired in terms of, you guys receiving that information and the studio's reaction to that. Like, how did that go down?
Yeah, that was fun. So we actually...
That's some sarcasm.
I wasn't even here that day. I was like driving to Dallas, and you called me and were like, "Hey,
yeah,
that
we knew
sucks.
something was up
Fuck,
when we saw
man.
their entire external projects team, which is the publishing group within DE that was who we talked to. We really didn't talk to the Warframe team much, or the guys who had worked on Warframe. We didn't talk to them much. We talked to this team they had established to manage their published projects. When all of them just went silent, all of them got disconnected from Slack at the exact same time, and we saw one or two of them had been, which means obviously that the people are let go, because it's the new classic way of finding out someone's been fired is it just is deactivated in Slack. And when we saw it was that entire group, I knew what was happening, because if it had just been one or two people, you think they're reorganizing, but they also cut the entire back end team that was doing the back end stuff on their side, which was like 8 to 10 people, all gone. And you see that and you're like, well, obviously they're not planning to keep the service running if the people who have to run it are gone. So at that point I knew, and quickly we got on a call with them, and obviously I understood what I was about to hear when we got on the call with them. It's still kind of shocking. And when we got up,
That was way worse than what I originally thought. Where they just called them up and like, "Hey, y'all going back?" They're like, "Oh fuck, dude." Yeah. Welcome to the video game industry in 2024, chat. God damn.
Off the call, I thought, all right, I got to think about how we're going to tell the team, which we were going to tell them that day. But when you hear that as someone who runs a studio, your first thought is, okay, let's plan. Let's be ready to think about how we're going to approach this with the team. And so we were thinking about it when I think it was Polygon or someone like that broke the news to the team for me that the game had been canceled and that DE was dropping as a publisher.
Also,
so
welcome to 2024.
The team found out before I could tell them, because the press got a hold of it first. So the rest of the team heard through links shared in Slack, and then I got to send out a message to the team like, well, I guess we should talk. So then we got together and did an all hands meeting and sort of talked about what it meant, but also about how, the game was coming to Airship. We didn't know how long it would take. We didn't know what it would look like once it got to us. But the team held together. They believed in the game. I mean, there was a lot that, we took responsibility for during the early access launch. I think one of the hardest parts about it, and even today, one of the hardest things for us to sort of reconcile as a team is like making good with players, because that launch, it was, shit, right? It was terrible. And you don't want players
I still say PSO
you don't want that to be
Warsaw.
the last thing players remember about you or your project.
I do feel like
And
India
so we
was
spent a lot of time,
1,000
even
times
during launch,
Warsaw.
while the game was still live, trying to make good to players, fix issues. We fixed a ton of issues. We did make goods, trying to give currency, characters, tried to improve the game. And so when we thought that the game entirely may disappear, that was like a gutting feeling. So I'm glad that we're where we are today, which is with a better version of the game that is going to live forever. So the people who did buy it, they're gonna have something that they can log in and play with friends. Well, not log in anymore, but they can play with friends forever. So it took a while to get here, but the emotional roller coaster was rough. But the team never really seemed to lose faith in the core of the game, which was cool.
So the right stuff, by the way, that is always a question mark that I have with these sorts of things happen. Not that this sort of exact situation is common, but the rights, like, did D own the rights and did they just kind of gift them to you, or did you guys have to like buy them back? And like, was that a gamble that you made based upon X, Y, and Z? Like, what exactly was the deal with those rights?
Yeah, I mean, there's some aspects of the deal we can't get into, but the main thing was that Airship always owned the IP, but they had certain rights to it as the publisher, and there was just a sort of lengthy negotiation period to figure out exactly, because the devil is always in the details. Stuff that is important when you're talking to lawyers, and then you get the thing signed and it's sitting on a shelf and it's not necessarily something you're thinking about anymore. But in the end, I think it was a fair agreement, and we're able to move on cleanly with the game. And it left us with a lot of power to make the right decision for the game, which was good. We could have gone to another publisher. It would have been difficult because there would have been sort of a love triangle between the three of us. But that decision was really made for us just because there's not a lot of signing going on in the industry right now. There's more cutting going on than spending.
Yeah. What we were talking about earlier.
The silver lining is that it'll be the first time we finally get to self-publish something, which is something all devs want to do. Not necessarily in this circumstance, but here we go.
So when you guys do finally decide, okay, like, let's do this, let's self-publish, for the layman, what does that mean? But like, where do you start?
It used to mean a lot more, 10, 15, 20 years ago, like when we did Darksiders 1, publishing a game meant putting it in boxes, getting discs minted, distribution, buying store shelf, like buying shelf space in stores. That was a lot of work. You could not do it without a publisher. Really now, even the marketing effort was different, right? Because you were trying to get magazine space or TV spends, or we had a billboard for Darksiders 2, which was kind of cool actually. And now it's very different. Publisher means go through the steps necessary to put the game on Steam. Congrats, you're a publisher. You just published a game.
Yeah, you put down $100, fill out the paperwork, and off you go.
It's getting content creators to buy into the game and talk about it, and like our community guys do, living in Discord with a pretty big community in Wayfinder's case, talking to the community. So it's a lot more people.
Yeah, like that right there, what I said, chat. Don't forget that other thing I've been saying for years. Like, AdFate, magazine, billboard, that is all content cradled nowadays. So, like, don't get me wrong, though, like, the giant list of way to promote your game have been cut down, but at the same time, when they cut down to, content cradles and hopefully buying, like, front pay on Steam, because getting the game on Steam is not hard, they're only $100. But, like, that stuff is, like, as it become more limited, of course, it become easier and no offensive, but also now you are fighting for, of course, time and the people that are willing to give you the time. So that is like the main issue that come with it being as streamlined as it is. So yeah. Let me see. Give me 1 second, chat. Okay. But yeah. That is the whole thing. Like I was saying, like, I'm curious to see if they ain't gonna have the funding to actually be able to, get this in the hands of like content creators, let alone how many will actually want to, take part in this again.
Feasible for a developer to be a publisher as well. It's just hard to get noticed. That's today's big problem.
So definitely want to talk a little bit more detail about the game itself and what's coming to it and the changes that we can expect in the future of the game. But just before I pivot to that, I want to just have a brief discussion about like that moment where you were still trying to get the game supported by another live service publisher and the kind of discussions that you were having around that. Because we hear about this all the time. Like we're hearing about how tight the funding environment is and we're seeing all the time studios being closed and layoff, whatever else. What are those discussions like when you're actually sitting across the table and like what are you hearing?
Yeah, that was the whole thing. Yeah, if we got a call like that, we'll never come back. Yeah, like you got to give them credit for, after that phone call and then after all the legal stuff got situated, for not just being like, yeah, we just done. It's time to move on to a different project. Like 100%. Like, you got to give them credit for any willing to actually go through with what need to be done. Any of it now equaling, a 100% reboot.
When you hear the no, you know what I mean? Like, what are these investors saying to you with regards to why they're not being willing to spend money in this current climate? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, you don't often hear no. You hear maybe, and then the radio silence is your no.
Interesting.
Yep.
I mean,
that's how it is getting review codes that will.
I think one big difference was that we didn't even have that many meetings. Like, we didn't even have interested parties that we even had that conversation with. I mean, we tried everyone, and we work with an agency, and we're pretty much have access to everyone, but it was just the same story. It's like no one's really looking, not for something of this size. I mean, like the operating costs of a service game are astronomical, and a lot of times you got to weather the storm. Sometimes it takes a couple years before games like these find their footings.
I'm looking at
the
you,
really
Final
huge
Fantasy
ones
14.
do take years and years in early access and just evolving over time. And it's hard to find someone that has that much money and that level of commitment where they're like, we're gonna weather those tough years, not just months. So it definitely wasn't something that we could do, and there weren't really any, like, we maybe had a couple of like serious conversations that sort of fizzled out. But
yeah, and I think it's a combination too of when you're in this climate where money is tight, it looks like user behavior is changing and they're not spending as much money buying as many games. It becomes about, for publishers and not just publishers but investors, it's like risk mitigation. Like, what can you do to reduce the risk? And Wayfinder was a ton of risk because it came out, it's sitting at mixed on Steam, which is a big improvement from overwhelmingly negative like it was in the first couple of days when people couldn't log in. But between the risk mitigation, its rocky launch, which put a cloud over it.
Yeah, a lot of shit go into that. Whoops. So like, I'm with you.
Spending a lot of money. Also, I think, even though it isn't really said out loud, there's clearly an understanding that people kind of want to move away. Like, players don't necessarily want free-to-play games the way they did. I think that,
to be honest, chat, I feel like where this is going, like, from my point of view on that, real quick, is this is something that we have also talked about on stream many times when it comes to like live service games. And like, this is one of them things I'm seeing a lot in the industry right now. Do you guys remember back to like 2004, 2005, 2006? Back when there was, MMO coming out constantly. We had like Wild Dog, Matrix, Old Republic, Star Wars Galaxy, what was the APB, like all that stuff were coming out, and Lord of the Wayne would be another one. Of like when all that stuff was happening and how they all just very much like got shuttled or very much got like put down to like barely being alive. Like very close to like being in like life support. And how back then, when that all were going down, and company were like, oh, I'm making an MMO. I'm doing an MMO. And then company would not touch it with a 10-foot pole. Just because of like how like crushing WoW was to that industry. And how like, like now, obviously you debate that with like, WoW and Final Fantasy 14. Obviously, especially outside of Asian markets being, the pedestal that MMO set upon, which is a whole freaking miracle that Final Fantasy 14 was able to do that. So, good job on that, Yoshi P and everybody that he brought in. But, like, at the same time, like, during that time period, MMO started becoming, like, a naughty word in the industry, where, like, if you spoke anything similar to making an MMO, no company would touch you with a 10-foot pole. And I feel like I've been saying for the last few years, I feel like we are doing that with live service now. And like, cause remember the reason I have always called live services MMO light, because a lot of them, from like a design aspect, from the way they are won, it's very, very similar to way that MMOs were ran in the mid 2000s. You know, of course, gameplay can vary because, you know, you can say Assassin's Creed a live server because they sell, you know, microtransaction levels and whatnot. But like, once you like peel back that front layer of the game, it literally operates the exact same way. And that is when, as I was saying, like, we started seeing developers being like, it's not an MMO, it's a live service game. And that was like their way of getting around the publishers to get more publisher interested in publishing them stuff. And then, you know, we had a few successes out there. And then also we have like the mobile side as well, because like we started seeing a lot of stuff started bleeding in from the mobile side into gaming, which is the main reason why there was no diss in monetization between, you know, whatever game that coming out from a AAA dev to a, you know, mobile game, and no dissing. And I feel like we are hitting the point with live service games where, like what they're talking about here, of like the main reason why a lot of companies wouldn't touch them beyond the given that come with it. You know, the whole yields of, you know, a downward spiral. Because remember, in Final Fantasy 14, 14 technically didn't become a big thing to what was that, like Stormblood to Endwalker? Like, I think it was Endwalker, right? Like right before Endwalker, when they had all that server issues and the game actually like blew up into the mainstream. So at that point, we're what, like 8 years? 7 years, 8 years before 14 found its footing. Not if we don't count 1.0, that is. So it like, I feel like that is like where we are now. We are right back to the mid 2000s of the company not wanting to deal with live server. If they are not making a live server in-house from day one with their own people, they just don't want to touch it. And like, that's the main thing, the way I foresee it happening. And well, like a lot of it starting to come into play is indicate like when Wayfinder were coming out, like when we watched the pack panel from like, what was that, 23, 22, was like, they was like, yeah, the MMO. But they wasn't even saying live service at that time. Because, you know, they obviously, a lot of the industry are trying to move away from being like, we're making a live service game. And, you know, kind of funny that some are just being like, we're making an MMO now. That a whole thing. I just think that kind of funny that we can't full loop. I'm looking at you as well, Sega. You call Fancy Star MMO, not a live service game. But yeah, like, I feel like that where we are. We are right back to the mid 2000s, where like the quote unquote live server industry is just gonna like solidate with like 2 or 3 games, and that is the games, you know. So yeah, not like much room for, you know, something like Wayfinder to come in. Like don't get me wrong, like it kind of makes sense in the case of DE, especially since how Warframe influence it was. You know, what they were talking about them having, you know, affiliate with that type of stuff, but it's still one of them cases of like, yeah, like over the next few years, and even now, I honestly in the camp, well, live server becoming a bad word in the game industry. Not the player base, but on like the back end, like the people actually making the contract, making the deals.
There was some statistic I saw that said, you know, the top 5, 6, 7 earning free-to-play games have all been out for over 5 years.
Yeah,
you know, there's
that was the information that came out a few months ago.
New in this space today is something that people want to take a risk on. And honestly, as we were having these conversations, once we believed internally that we had a path to just escaping free-to-play entirely, because for a while when we first proposed this internal idea, like let's just make it a cool co-op online, just a co-op action game. One price. We were still entertaining both ideas, but the more we in February started the work on stripping the service out, making real loot, you know, everything that the game is today, and we were still having some conversations about the free-to-play version.
What did that mean? Echoes going away.
I don't want to say secretly hoping that they wouldn't work out, but everybody internally, I mean, certainly the studio, you can imagine how excited our devs were to be working on a premium game again.
Yeah, right.
It completely changed the teams, because it was 4 years of rough development.
Yeah.
Then the launch. I mean, you talk about taking the wind out of your sails. Nobody really, like, morale stayed very respectably high given the situation.
Yeah,
But
they
when
was
we
all
made this
pretty
premium
peppy at the
chip,
end of
you
the
could
day.
sense there was it re-energized everyone, because they felt like they were making a better game. Not just a better game, but devs care about the players. And so this idea that you're making a game that players were going to be more excited, they're just going to respect the game more, because of the stigma that comes with service games today in particular.
I still stand like the biggest issue going into this. It's not the Wii branding, not the Wii launch, not the single player aspect. I still say the biggest hurdle they need to get over is how do you wash off all that shit that was left from DE? You know, with the launch, with all the issues, the sudden just you all file bit, and the player base, being screwed out of all the money because it's all on DE side. That is the biggest hurdle I still think they got to overcome. But like, how do they make that either to the point that the player base will become okay with it, or how are they going to market a game to people that have no idea or can easily forget about it? That is the biggest problem I think they have going into being a single player premium game.
It really made everybody was really happy to be doing it.
Yeah. How big is the team, by the way?
Team is 80-ish now.
80-ish.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, cool.
Yep.
So, Joe, we talked about like the business stuff and like changing the business model and gutting some things, but from the creative angle, how does that go down? Did you guys like go back to the drawing board? Are you like rewriting the world? Is it like a director's cut edit or something? Like how do you even approach that creatively?
Yeah, I think so. Like, narratively, a lot of it is we just stitched it up as best we could. We didn't have a lot of time.
Yeah, that was fun. There was the moment
resources to like.
Oh shit! How are we gonna put an ending into the game? How does that work?
Yeah, so we did our best there, and then gameplay wise, there was a lot of
absolutely.
Back to the drawing board. Adding stats to weapons and stuff like that is like, luckily, like Steve, the game director,
Glamboy probably could walk fairly decent at live solve it, but yeah,
sort of. He's done systems for our past few games already, and like he's super excited to do stuff like that. So I think everyone just worked as quickly as we could to get. And I will say the one side benefit of the just the service beginnings of the game, we made so much stuff for like MTX, and like just we knew that we were going to have to drop stuff over a long period of time. And so like once all that stuff got in the game, it was cool because there's like so much loot. Every chest you open has meaningful stuff in it. It's not just crafting resources, and it made each run of the dungeon.
Yeah, that was a little detail because that is a very good point. Well, pretty much when you open chests as of now, or in the original version, was like the main thing you got was like the mutator to change the elemental stuff and the stuff in the dungeons, and then it was just crafting materials. Outside of like some open world stuff had some money, and of course had item to like farm or to summon bosses. But yeah, like I get that is a good point. That it will actually be something more in there. But like I said, I personally still, if they do get rid of the whole needing like 10 items to make a weapon type of deal, I am still gonna be a little sad. I really wish that hopefully will still be a thing. If so, from a design aspect, for me, I would just be like item drop, and then if you want to enhance them, because they obviously keep in an awakening system where you get like part 1, part 2, part 3, like for all you PSO people, have that be you have to collect the items. That'd be nice, but we will see if they can keep that stuff at all.
It's more fun, and I really hope people play like as many of the Wayfinders as they can, because each one of them has so much unique like armor and weapons and
There's
stuff.
a lot of stuff in the game.
So yeah, it was definitely a huge undertaking. I'm kind of shocked that it happened.
Yeah, because to be honest, the game itself is very grindy, as we're gonna see tonight. But it for me, it was like grindy in a way that is satisfying, because like nothing is completely out of your grasp. Like how NGS is like you could play for thousands of hours and never get the one item you need. Well, Wayfinder was like, oh, you play for a few hours, maybe 3 hours, maybe 10 hours. But like you you are guaranteed to get that stuff within like a window. So like the grind for me was actually more fun because, you know, it could be 5 minutes or it could be 3 hours from now. But at the end of the time, it's like, I know that it's not going to take more than like X number of hours. So like very satisfying that way from a grind. Instead of being like how NGS said, which the RNG is insane. But yeah, like don't get me wrong, there are like other games that are way more grindy. You know, look at NGS, look at anything coming out of Korea. You know, I would honestly put Wayfinder closer to grinding as like PS2 RPGs, like a little more closer to that.
So quickly, to be honest.
Yeah, I think one of the things we'd like to convey too is it's cool that it's a premium game now, right? It's one price and you get everything. If we had built the game with that in mind over the past 4 years, it wouldn't be what it is today, right? Like there is some necessity is the mother of invention, and there is some, I guess, compromise because the team only had a limited runway to make this change. And so it's, let's just call it unique, you know, the way you unlock the characters and the weapons. And there was so much armor, there was so much stuff that was cosmetic that became loot, so many housing things.
Yeah, because the house will supposed to be like a big thing.
And we're like, well, we got to give them the players somehow. So, I mean, it's like a loot shower to some degree because there's
absolutely Temple RNG, yeah,
which is cool, and it's all jammed in. And the game is going to stay in early access when it first.
I still haven't seen half of the stuff that I've been grinding for.
We're hoping that it's going to leave early access by the end of this year once we've got all the platforms. So PlayStation, which obviously was already on PlayStation. And then Xbox. Eventually, we had planned to do on Xbox, planned to release it on Xbox, even as a live game. We're still going to try and do Xbox. And around the time we release that, we'll be putting in the last of the major content, and then we'll leave early access. But that should help us smooth out during early access some of the balance issues. Maybe it's with loot delivery, maybe it's with some spiky moments where, you know, progression or things are a little too grindy. During early access, we're going to look at player feedback and try and smooth some of those edges out and just wrap the game up as best we can story-wise, which is not easy. Wasn't easy. It was meant to go on for years, right?
Yeah. It's definitely going to have a
we'll try and find an endpoint.
MMO-light feel, even though you're just playing with a small party or alone.
You know, honestly, you know what's going to be funny about that, chat? You know how I have said about how one of the things that caught my interest about Wayfinder was how much it felt like dot hack. And this is gonna be funny if we just come in full circle to that. You know, we're just like, now that it's single player, like, yep, it's just dot hack. Cool. Full circle once again, chat.
It's still the pacing feels more MMO like, which, you know, is cool. Like, plenty of like decent sized world to explore, cool dungeons.
But because it was built as a service game, one nice thing is that it was already set up to support drop in, drop out co-op. And, you know, you play as your character, you pick up stuff, you take that stuff back to your save game. So it's really player friendly that way.
Sure. Yeah, right. So am I right in assuming that there's not going to be any further updates to this game post launch, or are you leaving the door open to that depending on the reception the game gets after it goes, you know, 1.0?
Yeah, absolutely leaving the door open to that. So when the game launches, when it relaunches, when the Echoes update comes out in June, that won't be the last update of the game. We will be doing patches, we'll be fixing things, and we have at least one more major content patch coming.
Probably the Seminole Quiet
before
line.
The game leaves early access, or maybe right when it does.
And also
it will add an entire new explorable overworld area, new dungeons, at least one new character, new weapons. So there's a lot that's still coming.
So good. So Seminole is still verified to be coming.
Early access.
Ideally.
And so it's going to be coming out at $24.99 into early access, and the price will be going up when it leaves early access after we've added all that stuff in.
Yeah, right. Cool.
And I still say it's going to be 40
and
probably.
So, okay, so the door is open for future content on the Wayfinders, obviously, but at the same time, I'm sure you've got, you're thinking about the future for the studio and what comes next. So, what is that thinking going on right now? Like, is that a problem for tomorrow, or is that like, no, we're absolutely very focused on that right now? Like, how are you?
Yeah, real quick on that. Well, but like, yeah, that was like the main reason why I did not farm an NGS. Well, like, you farm an item, and then literally you spent thousands of hours to get the item, just so like a seasonal event will around like 2 months later that give you a weapon on par, if not better, than the item you just spent thousands of hours trying to farm. Like, once I realized that what was happening in NGS, I just stopped farming. Absolutely. And lucky enough in this, like, we will see if it's going to be the same case or not. But Elite in the MMO didn't have that problem at all. But yeah, that was like a big motivation killer for NGS when it came to like the actual like grinding and loot stuff. So yeah, 100% with you on that.
Approaching all of that.
Yeah, it's a problem for today and tomorrow. So we already have a new project in development, one that we're
there we go.
taking on the road and pitching. We're talking to publishers and investors about it. Depending on how
I had a
Wayfinder
feeling
does,
it was something
potentially even,
happening.
hopefully, again, continuing our streak now, which is one as a publisher. But yes, it's tough because the landscape's not great out there, right? And it's having a game canceled doesn't leave you in a great financial position. But as work on Wayfinder is winding down, we're starting some of our own games again. Obviously, the not ones we can talk about, but yeah, we're definitely thinking about the future. Not just one game, potentially going back to being, a multi-project studio like we were for a while when we had both Darksiders.
Chat. I didn't realize something. How you doing, Wag? Welcome. New interview came out today on Wayfinder, so we're getting caught up. How you doing, dude? But I didn't realize something, chat. Since they said it's a new product and they are pitching it, so that means it's probably going to be a brand new IP if it can make it out of the door. Because if they were making, a new Darksider game, or they also did the little one League of Legends single player game as well. Like, if it were one of them property, then they wouldn't have to worry about pitching it. So my question going to be here, is it going to be a brand new IP, or are they going to be trying to pitch the sequel to Battle Chaser? Because that'd be nice, because Battle Chaser was great. Like, I thought like a JRPG style game. Maybe? Because I'm trying to remember who published that. I don't remember. I don't think it was Activision. I don't remember who published it. I could find out since I have it. But yeah, that is a nice little note there to keep in mind. Since it obviously going to be a new IP or something of the sort. So wait, did I not tweet? I thought I did tweet. Oh God, did I forget to tweet it out? I'm sorry, Wag. I thought I did. My bad. I'm sorry, dude.
Genesis and Rune King going at the same time. Games of that size, premium titles, like we have obviously had success doing those. So, and we enjoyed it. It was fun doing. It's fun. We'll have shipped 4 titles in 10 years with Wayfinder releasing, and we'd like to keep that like cadence going.
Yeah,
feels good.
That's a great track record.
Yeah.
I mean, Wayfinder's had obviously share of problems for sure, but I mean that track record behind you with the other titles you've put out has been extremely strong. And I think it's great that you guys are continuing on. Sorry, Joe, you're going to say something.
Oh, I just strategically, I think it's scary to put all your eggs in one basket too. It's like,
we learned that.
The one time we
Yeah, I
did
was gonna
that,
say-
it didn't really work out.
I was going to say that was
great.
Wayfinder.
All the stories you see like every day of studios shutting down and, people getting laid off and whatever, it definitely is scary. So for us, I think we'd feel more comfortable working on smaller games and more than one, and having them staggered like we have before. It just makes more sense than ever now.
It is weird because we learned so much working on Wayfinder that to a degree it feels almost like a shame to have some service-based game experience and to not utilize it. But whatever. We're happy to go back to the games we know we can do well. Which Wayfinder Echoes really is that. It's that type of game again.
Any chance you guys might revisit Darksiders?
Oh, thank you for answering
not us.
question that.
That's if we still own that IP, you bet we would.
Would you be interested in doing that, do you think, if the opportunity ever presented itself?
We'd definitely be open to that.
Yeah, I think we would.
Yeah. I mean, Darksiders Genesis was very much an airship way of going about.
Didn't say it was
Darksiders
really good.
Game. I was glad we did it too, because we got through 2 titles at Vigil, and we were
One in
actually
Genesis is
hired
still my
Darksiders
favorite.
ourselves. We'd start working on another game internally when THQ went bankrupt, and so it felt like a painful way to end our time on Darksiders, and we didn't think we'd be working on another one, so we were excited to get to do Genesis. That was really cool. I'd work on another Darksiders game.
Yeah, we need at least one
for
more
sure.
to finish up the story.
Even though it's not ours, it still feels like, I think all of us who were part of, the founding Crude Vigil still feel some love-based ownership of Darksiders, but it's in good hands now with the Gunfire guys. So
Yeah, nice.
All right. Well, with that,
Wait.
Ryan, Joe, thank you very
Wait, you
much.
don't know
for your time,
Darksiders
and,
in
good luck with
production?
Wayfinder, and
I did not
we'll talk
know
to you
that.
soon.
thanks. We appreciate it. It's great talking to you guys.
But okay, where are my mounts? There we go. There we go, chat. The interview. First of all, I did not know there was somebody working on Darksider, chat. I'm interested. Any of I still would love it, obviously, if it was Airship doing it. But yeah, nonetheless, here you go, chat. There you the link, chat. But yeah, I got a few things came out of this. Like, my theory hold up about them being like another property that they obviously working on, because like I had a feeling like once it started happening, obviously they need a backup plan, because in no way that this is going to be the game to keep them alive. So obviously they needed to be working on something else. I'm super curious to see what it is, since so they said they all pitching it, so it kind of feel like a new IP. So it'd be interesting to see what that's gonna be. And also, at least now we know exactly how long they've been working on it. So they started it process in like February. So it's safe to say there's probably gonna be one of them cases, like obviously, like when it actually become a thing, and actually comes out in June. That I think we can always assume that there are not going to be that much dis in here, outside of like the looped up. But yeah, overall, like that was a pretty good interview. It didn't really like trail across anything or repeat anything we have seen like from the Asmongold stuff and the stuff they have put out. So that was actually really great. Any if we did learn that the situation with DE was way worse than I thought it was. Because they're like, man, that sucks. That like that your way of knowing you're getting ready to get fired was literally watching other people get fired, and just like Thanos snapped out of existence. And then also the pet stuff. I did not know the pet stuff actually got that information faster, which I get not surprising, because I imagine some of them people who got laid off probably went straight to like all the outlets. But so, wait, a dark and greedy reboot of Darksider? Darksider kind of was already that in a lot of ways, if you think about it. I kind of feel like they did like a more dark and gritty Darksiders. It would just be like entering that like very like cringy camp, just because Darksider already was like, the more grittier side, especially since like how heavily they were pulling, from the Bible when it came to like, the apocalypse and everything. I get maybe visually, because I get, especially since, Darksiders, were made by Airship or, Vigil when they were still there. It still had, Joe art style, the art style Wayfinder had, the one WoW had, pretty much everything ever worked on that art style. But maybe in that way. I guess technically 3 kinda went that way a little bit. Because 3 kind of leaned away from his art style, but I think they did not work on 3, because I think they only did 1, 2, and Genesis, if I remember right. So, which is probably the other reason why 3 was very much more Devil May Cry and Zelda. But yeah, Darksider 1 is great. I have like little issues here and there on Darksider 1, but Darksider 1 is like probably one of the better like Zelda style games, hand down. And like Darksider is still one of them series that like I would love to see like a proper like closure to that series. Since the way they were setting that up with each game being each of the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and now that we have got all 4, we should be like entering like quote unquote in game for the end. Like the best way I would describe it would be like the net game should be what Legacy of Kain Defiance was. For the Legacy of Kain series, where it just like kind of took it all together. But yeah, I highly recommend Darksider, the rest of Darksider stuff. Like Genesis were great. I have like, I got iffy feelings about 2. There are parts of 2 that, you know, was like very dragged out. So I feel like 2 would have been good if like probably like 40% of that game got cut. 3 was good, but 3 was also like dissing because, like I say, it was like, well, it felt like the example all we give was like with Darksider, like 1 was very much Zelda, 2 was trying to be Diablo, 3 were trying to be like Devil May Cry Bayonetta, and then 4 were trying to be twin stick shooters. You know, like top-down twin stick, you know, type games. So each of the games, you know, obviously have like their own genre tied to them. So I'd be interested to see like what that would become with like all that combining. But yeah, it was a good interview overall though. Like, and also nice actually, you know, we got the horse and mouse here, you know, with Joe and them. So that also great. But yeah, the way it's sounding like we're not going to see that much of a switch between MMO to single player. Probably not right out of the gate. I am happy as of now. It seemed like some of it still going to happen. I think I did wait probably the other 2 Wayfinder that was in like the data mining stuff. Them was all probably gone at that point. But then again, like I was talking about last night, it felt like probably what they were trying to do is get all the Wayfinder that was in like the cover art in the game before, you know, before they wrap it up fully and move on. So we will see. We will see if DLC happen. I think 1.0 will probably be it. I don't know, outside of like a few little patch updates here and there, but if they do DLC, I will buy it. So, because I was going to buy all the season passes, but that didn't happen. But nonetheless, I think that's about it for the interview. God, it's been an hour. It's been over an hour. So if you have stuck through this over on YouTube, especially if you're watching it after the fact, be sure to do thumbs up, subscribe, hit all the bell. Once again, I will be back on Twitch on Tuesday when our banned by guilt association well off, and we will be doing a 24-hour stream on Tuesday once my account become available. But for the time being, we are streaming here on YouTube as well as on Kick, both at Toy Maconn. So yeah, do the thumbs up, do the subscribe on YouTube, and with that, let's get back into the live stuff. And we all doing this live, chat. They're gonna see you on YouTube. I hope you behave, chat. You better behave.